All right. Hello, everyone watching. My name is Lauren Conley. I'm a speech language pathologist working with integrity speech therapy. And every month we like to have a meeting around a certain topic related to autism as a way to support families who have autistic children, autistic loved ones. Whoever wants to come and learn more is welcome to view. And we meet every third Wednesday of the month. So we'll be having another meeting next month. So for today, joining us, we have Tessa Watkins. She's an autistic parent of a toddler, and Tessa goes by the pronouns they, them. Tessa is a founding admin of One Bad Autistic, and they have a special interest in social justice and advocacy. And we're going to talk today. I have some questions given to me by family members, for myself, curiosities, questions that I'm so excited to hear answered, and from someone who's experienced being autistic and who's experienced difficulties that you might find your family having, your child having, and hopefully these are going to be very helpful to go through. So my first question that I have is, how would you define autism, and what is it and what is it not?
Well, I would like to start by saying that autism is how I experience the world. It's how I make sense of the world. It's not just being differently abled or superpower. I'm not less than. And, it is a disability, but it's also an identity, because it affects all of my life. It affects every aspect of my life. It's how I think, it's how I feel. It's a lot about how I feel, both like emotionally and physically. So there's a lot to it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so autism is really can mean a lot of different things to different people. It's not just one, as if you've ever heard the saying, you met one autistic person, that means you've met one autistic person. Every person's different. And it's definitely not a cookie cutter for sure. Yeah. So what is
one neurotypical person? You've met one.
Exactly. Every single person. You can't give it just one label. There's certain qualities that might be similar for people. So in your experience, what have you found a quality that maybe you have that you've found that other autistic individuals might also have that you've met?
Let's see, like a good quality, I assume.
Let's see. Yeah, it could be a good quality. It could be a quality that you find like relates you, something that you both have.
I would say, well, if you had asked me, Tessa, can you see the big picture? I would be like, absolutely. I can definitely see the big picture, and then you'd say like, well, can you see the details? I'm like, well, yes, of course I can see. Like, I would be like, yes, I can see both the big picture and the details. But when it comes to cooking, I can't see the big picture. It is, and I think this is like related to cognitive flexibility, specifically cognitive inflexibility. So it engages that executive function, because studies have shown that the average person can remember between like 5 and 9 things. I think I'm closer to like 1 and 5 things, 1 and 3 things, 3 to 5 things. So like I'm looking at the refrigerator and I'll be like, okay, I have deli meat, I've got cheese, I've got ground beef, I've got milk. And by the time I get to the milk, I forget what the first thing I even said was. So I have no idea what to cook because I can't keep the idea of like what these ingredients are in my mental inventory. So I can't put that picture together. And now you add cabinets and pantries, so this whole time, like I struggle so hard to make myself food because I cannot put these pictures together. So we have, just being as an adult, I'm semi-independent, meaning I rely on my partner to cook for me, or I rely on easy to make meals or takeout, things like that. So I think that's something, as a unique characteristic for autistic people, that they can probably relate to. It feels like, of course I can see the big picture, but not with cooking for some reason.
Not when there's so many steps. And I see that you have all of your note cards there in front of you. So you're someone that has learned to be organized. Have you found that you've had to kind of take that extra step to be organized in other areas of your life?
Yes, yes. I think Sherlock Holmes had popularized the idea of a memory palace, so people can kind of visualize what that is. And that's a type of artificial memory versus your natural memory. Your natural memory is just being able to recall. Your artificial memory is when you use like some kind of mnemonic or other device to help you remember things. So a memory palace is one example, associations another example, having physical objects is another example. So because my memory is just not great, I use mnemonic devices all the time to help me remember things. I have an apron when I cook, just to remind myself that I am indeed cooking. If I leave the kitchen and I forget that I was cooking, I'll be like, oh, I'm wearing my apron. I'm gonna go back and see what's happening before something burns.
So that could be why routine is so important, because you know that when you put on your apron, this is part of your I am cooking routine.
Yep, that is exactly it. I have a routine even in my shower. My my soaps are in a very specific order. If they are out of order, and it has happened, I accidentally do it out of order and then I restart from the beginning. I have my shampoo, my conditioner, my body wash, no other soaps in the bathroom other than my partner's, but like I have a shelf dedicated for me. And there was a one time where I guess somebody was cleaning the shower. Obviously, it wasn't me. I didn't have the spoons for that. But they got switched. And I did the conditioner first, and I put it in my hand. Like, I felt like I was buffering. Like, I'm sitting like, what is this? Isn't right. And it took me a long time to process. This is conditioner. Well, I can't waste it, so I'm gonna condition my hair, but now I'm gonna do soap and then I'm gonna do conditioner again. So, because like I had to do it in that order. So routine's important.
Yes, that's great. Now, for all of our listeners who maybe have never heard of spoons, can you explain what that is?
Um, well, it came about, I forget the creator's name, but she was using it to describe her condition, which is lupus. And it's basically spoonfuls of energy, if it helps. When you're just an average person, you might have unlimited spoons. You don't think about all the things to do in the day. You just set your agenda and you go out and you do it. For someone who has a disability, whether it's invisible or physical, they might have to choose where they spend their energy because they're not going to have enough energy to last them the entire day to do everything. So I will say like, oh, that's a spoon. I can't do that. One of my most recent examples was when I was cooking. I say examples, it's like a TikTok thing. I was cooking and I was counting down, like, so when I take my butter, I count backwards before I cut the butter instead of forwards, because the next time I go to reach and I just want to see how much butter do I have, instead of having only 4 and 5, you would have to then count like, okay, I have 2 tablespoons left. I can just see the number and say it's 2. So having to do the counting was a spoon as opposed to just looking at the number on the butter stick.
That's great. Yeah, make it easy for yourself. Set yourself up for success next time you cut the butter.
Mhm.
Ah, good. Yeah, I like that. And so spoons then is something, a metaphor we can say for when we're out of energy, we're out of spoons. That means we just don't have any more mental energy to spend towards whatever it is that we need to do.
Yes, and there's another autistic creator who designed this idea of tickets, and I love this theory so much more. She describes them as, her name's Hillary, she describes them as carnival tickets, that those are your energy. And the idea is that you will get a ticket that is pre-written with what to spend that energy on. And I so relate to this because I might have the energy to clean my house, but I don't have the energy to do my laundry. But in the priorities, it doesn't matter. The tickets are what they are. I might, be only like, even it might just be, I think one of the good examples, like I might have brush my teeth energy, but I don't have a get out of bed ticket. so I can't brush my teeth until I've gone to bed, but I don't have that ticket. So I'm just gonna lay in bed thinking about brushing my teeth and not actually be able to do it. And then if I never get out of your bed ticket, that other ticket might expire. That motivation, fleeting, go away. And then I just end up paralyzed, doing nothing.
So wait, explain again the get out of bed ticket. So how
Um,
would you get out of bed then?
so it's like everything you do, it's a spoon or a ticket. You know, I think that one is more about motivation than energy. So it's like, so you could use spoons and tickets in tandem. Um, so like, oh, maybe you're laying in bed. I don't know how to make this really relatable to anyone else other than myself, but like maybe you're just laying in your bed and you're like, I should get up right now, but I don't want to. I should get up. No, I should get up. And you just kind of get in this loop where you're like, I want to do something. Like, it would be nice if I got up. It'd be nice to take a shower. I just can't. So like, I think one of the things I talk to my partner about is he will often say like, we just gotta make yourself do it. You gotta just make yourself do it. I'm like, how do you find the energy to just make yourself do it? Like, that's something I don't relate to. I don't know how people find this energy to just make themselves do things they don't want to do. I don't know how they do that. Maybe that's something I don't get.
Well, actually, I love that you're bringing this up because I'd never thought of it as tickets. I love that idea. When I work with kids, I do find that there are some kids I work with, and really most of them, most autistic children I work with, it's great to see that they are doing what they want to do. And I view that as really beautiful because that means if they're doing something with me or with other kids, they really, really, really want to do it. And I find that when it's not motivating, when there's not that internal drive to do something, it's going to be like pulling teeth. It's so hard. And really, for all kids, we want them to have that internal motivation to get up and do these things. So it's not just learn, how to match these items because I said so, right? It's not because of external reasons, it's because of that internal drive. And once they find that internal spark, it just is so much easier and better for really them, because then they're going to want to keep doing it.
Yeah. I think when you're an adult, you then turn that into passions. So like fleeting motivation can turn into lifelong passions. And if you can find what that lifelong ticket is, there you go. There's your golden ticket.
Oh, I love that. Oh, yes, that's exactly it. That's going to lead you to what you're going to be doing every day. That journey is leading you to that emotional passion. I love that. So what is one myth about autism that you would like to debunk?
So that the myth is that kids can outgrow autism, because they don't. Autistic kids grow up to become autistic adults. They just do. Autism's a lifelong disability. It's the way you were born autistic. You don't become autistic. Nobody can make you be autistic. It's not the parents' fault. It's not the environment's fault. Like, you are just born that way. And you continue to be that way. Now, when you grow up, you might grow up in sense that you learn coping strategies, so you're not melting down as much. You learn masking skills, so you kind of blend in a little bit more. And you start to break apart your own processes. Like, I know we are very literal thinkers, but you start to learn nuance. And it takes a long time, like so much longer. There's a lot of nuanced things that I'm going to use the word nuance a lot because that's my favorite new word now. Nuance. But like, it's just, you learn that thing and you try to pick it apart. Because there's I use the term like, black and white thinking. And then it's like you're allergic to the gray area. And lately, like, that's why like social justice advocacy is becoming one of my special interests, because I just want to dive headfirst to the gray area and be like, let me dig around and see if I can make sense of this. See if I can pick out the white and the black from the gray and figure it out and do that. So it's a challenge to me that I'm excited to do.
No, I like that. And I like that. So I wrote down your keywords, nuance, which I also like, because really there's so many layers to nuances. It never really ends. And that's kind of
Yeah.
the meaning of the word is I'll teach you how to do, as you grow older, you learn how to manage your executive functioning skills better, learn how to plan, you learn how to tell someone a story while making sure they understand what you're talking about. You learn how to have social conversations, but there's so many nuances in all of those skills that really all of us as adults are still learning the nuances. The goal is just to get enough so that we're able to follow. We're able to kind of understand most of what's going on, but I think we are still, of course, learning nuances. When you go to a foreign country, there's a ton of new things to learn there. And then what you said about black and white thinking, how you said you're allergic to the gray area. Can you expand on that a little bit more about how your brain works when something is not necessarily black and white?
So that it's pretty complicated. I this is where I like to think like, so I do programming and I really jive with the programming because I can think like a computer in the sense that computers are very black and white. We use if then else statements, and that's essentially how I process things. Um, so I could say like, I don't know, give me an example. I can't think of an example.
All right. So if I were to say, so one thing that I work on with my clients is I try to define emotional terminology. So if
Okay.
let's say I was defining what the word annoyed means.
Annoyed.
Yeah, so annoyed. So I, as a neurotypical, I have trouble because I view all the gray. Well, sometimes you're annoyed when someone's just saying something the way you don't like it. And sometimes you're annoyed because someone's being mean and you're kind of mad. So there's a lot of gray in even defining what an emotional word is. And
I'm going to interrupt you just because I don't want to lose the thought.
yes.
When you asked what does annoyed means, I'm just thinking undesirable, bad. Like that's it. That's the whole definition. So I'm like, is annoyed a good trait or a bad trait? Which one is it? I've been taught that it's a bad trait. I think I used this hand for bad. It's a bad trait. So therefore annoyed is bad. I don't want to be annoyed. I don't want to be around annoyed people, I guess. I don't know. I just know that the word annoyed does not have a positive connotation to it. It doesn't have a positive association to it. So it's just bad. Just bad. That's the Boolean. So I think, and then if you were to ask me like, well, explain further, Tessa, what about it is bad? You're like, not happy, it's not angry, like it's very literal. Like I don't know if I could point to it in a book. That's actually another thing, because I have a toddler, she's 2.5. We're talking about feelings, and I'm not doing so well. We have like these books where you're like, okay, there's like a grid of 9 things of faces and the words and like match the words to the faces, and I get it wrong. I can't figure. I'm like this. Like they all look angry. I don't know which level of
These
anger
are
exactly.
bad and these are good, kind of like
Yeah,
separating it by.
exactly. It's like these are positive emotions and these are negative emotions, and that's is about as good as I get. Like I can't tell the difference between exasperated, annoyed, upset. I think I could identify rage because that's a lot physical.
Mhm.
But like if you're just internally raging, I don't know. I'm not gonna pick up on it.
Right, right. So I see what you're saying when you said you kind of go into the gray, you dig around and you pull out the black and white pieces. That's kind of what you just did. When I was defining annoyed, I don't view it. I mean, I view it, I know it's bad, but I view it as so many components that it just creates this picture of annoyed for me. I can imagine the face, the like kind of like that like side eye, like I can imagine my experiences when I've been annoyed at my sister or my mom or my family members or my husband. And I can imagine when they've been annoyed at me. So I kind of take all those experiences and that to me is annoyed. So it's really hard for me to define it in concrete black and white terms, but I like the way that you do, because in a way that's easier to start at the ground up, to just say bad, don't like it, and you start from there and then you build on there.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, like, it's unhealthy to stop at that level. Like, if you
Yes.
don't learn beyond that first Boolean, you might decide, well, if being annoyed is bad, if being annoyed means people react badly to me, if I am annoying, then I'm gonna start masking my natural in myself, and like I'm gonna try whatever I can to not be annoying. So I think like that's unhealthy for me to then essentially make that my global rule. I talk about my internal rules a lot, mostly to just myself. Nobody else knows about this stuff. Yeah. But like I'll make that my global rule. Like, okay, annoying is bad. It's in a bad bucket. Don't be annoyed. Don't be around annoying people. So yeah, so try to avoid being annoying means I will act differently to be essentially a people pleaser, to try and not be annoying. And nobody's ever told me that it's okay to be annoying sometimes. Like it's okay to be annoyed sometimes. And I think normalizing that, even though it's like a bad emotion, it's not bad. And that's the nuance that I'm trying to figure out. Like it might, like trying to figure out the difference between bad and negative, or like those little things, like that's, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around it just now trying to tell you. So I don't know if I'm explaining it right.
No, I love the way you're explaining it, that the difference between bad and negative, that's a very powerful statement, that just because it's negative, it's in the negative bucket. And I like your visual of buckets. That you put it in this bucket, just because it's in the negative bucket doesn't mean it's bad, because every single person on the planet has annoyed someone else.
Yeah.
Because we're all human. So I like that you normalize it, that it's good to learn about it, but then like you said, don't stop there. You kind of keep learning more of those nuances about what the word means, and understand internally that it doesn't mean that you're bad, that it's a bad thing.
Yeah, I think when it comes to like trying to teach their parents to teach their autistic children these nuances, you need to make sure that you're demonstrating these nuances, that that it's okay for them to be annoyed, it's okay for you to show that you're annoyed, that it doesn't mean that being annoyed or being annoying isn't a bad trait or a bad emotion. It's natural, it's human, and it's okay. So I think the other part is that whenever people would tell me, oh, you're so annoying, because I got that a lot. I got that a lot. And that would only validate my original global rule saying that annoying is bad. And it didn't grow beyond that. And then that affects my own self-confidence, where I'm like, okay, well, I just can't be annoying. I'm gonna not talk, I'm not gonna speak, I'm just gonna shut up and be over here and take up the small amount of space as possible, so I
Yeah.
don't annoy you.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing for parents is to just let their child know, you can never say it enough times. Let them know that it's okay. That's
Yeah.
actually my favorite phrase, is it's okay, and whatever follows. It's okay to be annoying, because we all are. It's
Yeah.
okay to make mistakes, because we all make mistakes.
I would even try to use the word annoying in a positive way and be like, hey guys, let's go be annoying. Want to go do a dance party? Like, just, like let's try being annoying in a positive way. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know how applicable that is to all the other emotions. But I think like being able to make that nuance and demonstrate that nuance as they're growing up, that will avoid it becoming a global rule.
I like that. So when you avoid something becoming a global rule, can it then become gray? So then can annoying become more gray? It could be something fun, you push someone's buttons and you have a good time, or bad.
Yeah, because I think we use the word silly for that.
Yep.
And maybe that's appropriate. I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. My toddler, she's like, I'm so silly. You're so silly, mama. And I'm like, yes, I am. Yes, you are. We're so silly. But yeah.
I like that. Yeah, no, So I'm an identical twin sister, and we did annoy each other on purpose, and we knew we were being, and we knew that it was we were annoying the other person on purpose. We didn't do it a whole lot, but there were definitely occasions. So I like that idea of spinning it in a positive way as well. Great. So let's go to the next one, which is, what is something that people seem to misunderstand about you?
Okay. You ready? It is basically like my tone, my
Mhm.
body language. I smile a lot, I laugh a lot, and I think this is just something of like reptilian defense mechanism because smiling it puts other people at ease. And somehow at some point in my life, I've been trained to try and put other people at ease. So I just smile, and it has nothing to do with actually how I feel on the inside. Like I could be an anxious ball of mess and just be laughing maniacally. Um, and so like people will just like, oh, she must be happy, she must be pleasant, and I'm over there just like, I'm freaking out. And they're just like, oh yeah, how are you, it's okay. Like, it doesn't match. And then to flip that, my ability to understand other people's tone and body language, um, I know that I think like a robot, but I say everyone sounds like a robot
Okay.
because I'm not really able to pick up on tone. True story, I was in the city going to like the Gateway Cafe, and my partner, he is a New York Giants fan. Obviously, we're in Steeler country. So I'm wearing a New York Giants hat in like winter time. It's a bit chilly out. I'm coming down the steps. I hold the door open for this gentleman. He comes out and he's like, nice hat. I'm like, thanks. He's like, that was a joke.
Oh,
And I was just like, ouch. Like I didn't say anything. I didn't react because I didn't process it fast enough. And he just walked away. And I'm thinking like, why would an adult do that to another adult? Like, come on. But like the things I didn't catch on, like maybe he did have a sarcastic tone. I don't know, but I assumed it was genuine. I thought he was literally compliment. Maybe because like in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, it's just another Giants fan. You don't usually see another Giants fan out there. So he was just complimenting my hat. And turns out he was making fun of me.
yeah, that's unfortunate that an adult would do that. I imagine that that probably happened quite a bit more when you were in
Oh
high
yeah.
school and
Oh yeah.
younger.
Plenty of times when I didn't like when they wouldn't say the punchline, saying like, oh, that was a joke, they would just say the sarcastic comment and I would be like, yeah, okay. And then that would be the end of the exchange. And I think that might be the closest thing to a superpower that I have because then I'm not emotionally hurt by these things.
Nice.
like like that's my defense where I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize you insulted me. So what else? um
That would be a superpower because I've definitely missed the joke and been like, oh gosh, I'm so embarrassed. So do you feel
yeah.
like you don't have that like body reaction if you
Oh,
think,
when it's pointed out that I missed the joke or that I was the butt of the joke, oh yeah, I definitely have that embarrassment reaction. And that's something that's just like a data point on my lifetime where it's like, well, that happens frequently. But yeah, it's just like in the moment, like when you don't detect it, unless the joke is explained to you later or in the moment, or like they said, like they make a comment after to point it out, you're like, oh yeah, la 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 la, ignorance truly is bliss at that moment. But the other thing that I've come to is that if knowledge is power, then ignorance is powerless.
mm, that's
So
true. That could be. It depends how much it really matters what
yeah.
they're talking about. But I hear what you're saying that it's easy to miss based on someone's tone. Now, if your significant other says something sarcastic, can you pick up on the sarcasm if it's someone you know?
No.
No. Okay.
My roommate in college, this was something that we would butt heads, not but it playfully butt heads. She would say something sarcastic, and she said it in such a deadpan tone that I believed her, and it was plausible. Like, it wasn't out of the realm of possibility. So I'm like, oh yeah, I guess so. That makes sense. And she'd be like, oh, that was sarcasm. I'm like, you're just really bad at being sarcastic then. She's like, no, you're just really bad at understanding it. And I'm like, I can deliver sarcasm perfectly fine. It's obviously I have no problem. Well, turns out it goes one way. I can dish it out, but I can't take it.
Oh, really? Okay. Because I was going to say, I've been on a lot of autistic chat rooms, and I've definitely seen sarcasm being used.
It it took a long time. My mom told me the story whenever I told her, like, hey mom, I think I'm autistic. She's like, that makes a lot of sense. You weren't sarcastic until you were 12. That was like my first time I used sarcasm was when I was 12. I don't
Okay.
know what it is for the average kid. So I think I was just late to the game. And it was something about roadkill. Or yeah, I think she pointed out roadkill on the side of the road as we're driving, and I'm like, I'm not hungry. So
Yeah, I don't know what age, but that's okay. So that's great that something that is commonly misunderstood, and I bet a lot of other people can relate who have children who are autistic or who are autistic themselves can relate to that as well. So what do you wish your parents knew when you were growing up that you think would be helpful?
I wasn't diagnosed until I was nearly 30. Um, and I've been making jokes all the time. How did you miss this? um, so I can obviously laugh about it now. But the I kind of wish my parents understood autism more, that they were able to identify the signs and the characteristics of autism, um, and that they didn't parent out of fear. And by that, I mean specifically like my mom was afraid to get me diagnosed because she didn't want to put a label on me,
Yes.
because she thought that if I had a label, that people would then start making fun of me. Um, Turns out I'm autistic with or without a label.
Mhm.
And other kids, they just intuitively pick up on who's different and they don't need a lot to make fun of you. So I still got bullied anyway. The difference is that I didn't understand why I was being bullied. I didn't have the language to advocate for myself. So when they would, you know, say mean things to me, I can't think of a very specific example, but the idea was that I would I would internalize that, and I felt like it was my fault. That they're picking on me for a reason, that they must have some kind of valid justification for wanting to hurt me, to make me feel bad, and it must be because I deserved it, must be because I'm broken, must be because I'm just not like the other kids, and they made that point. So I didn't have any words to advocate for myself. I didn't have any tools in my toolbox to tell me otherwise. Um, if I had known that I was autistic, if I had known that I was disabled, if I had any kind of language to be like, actually, this is why I can't process words that quickly. This is why I can't remember things so soon. Like one of the earliest memories was even from a teacher in 7th grade where I had my hand up and I'm like, I have a question. I don't understand what this was. I think we were going over like proofs and maths or something. And she asked me like, well, what don't you understand? I'm like, I don't know how to answer this. So we just kind of stood there like in silence for a little bit until she just walked away because she didn't know how to help me. I didn't know how to ask for help. And kiddo in the next row probably has an easier question than me. So I would struggle in school because I didn't have that kind of like, I don't know, help, accommodations or anything.
That makes
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And I honestly, I've heard so many parents say the same thing, that they don't want to give their kid a diagnosis or a label, that they would rather wait or avoid it altogether if possible.
Mhm.
And I think it's stemmed on that belief that Well, first of all, it's on a belief that label equals bad.
Yeah.
It's on the belief that label will, as you said, cause someone to bully or cause them to be different. But if they're already different, the label gives them, I really like the way you worded it, the label gives them the words to use and how to advocate for themselves.
I mean, like just learning about myself when I was learning like, oh, hey, I might be autistic. I think I learned about that in like 2018. And then, next thing I know, I'm on Google, going down these rabbit hole adventures of what is autism? What does it look like? What do they experience? And I think there was a quote that came across there, like, once you've learned what it is, like nothing else, it's like you found it, like nothing else describes you or describes the experience. I'm butchering the quote, but the point is that like it resonated with me so well. Like, yes, this must be the answer. This must be why, like how I think this way. It's like a justification for everything, and it makes so much sense to me. Um, and now I can use the words. I can be like, hey, I'm autistic. I have a word for that now. I have a word. I'm not broken. I'm autistic.
Exactly. And it puts you in a community of other people
Mhm.
who think in a very similar way.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you're surrounded by a bunch of other people that are like, I understand, I get it, you're like, I'm finally validated for the first time.
That is wonderful. And you started the Facebook group One Bad Autistic.
I did.
It's great. And so
Yeah.
you started that in 2020, you said?
Yes, it was shortly after I got evaluated where I was just like, wanted to find, I was trying to find an autistic led space. And there are some that were like really big, some of them really small, and values were just all over the place. So I'm like, I just want something like me. So it's based off of the One Bad Mother fan group, which is based off the One Bad Mother podcast. And the group is just run by listeners. It's not related to the actual podcast. Um, but like they just have a bunch of like values that are very centralized, very specific, kind of progressive. And like I agree with all of this. And now I just want to add autism awareness and acceptance into this community. So let's like, shift some of these rules over and make it so that we can have like a progressive group of autistic people like me that I can resonate with, talk with, and, talk about all sorts of things.
That's great. I hear little one, totally fine. All right, so we have a few more things here. Oh, there we go. You're good. So the next one, the next question I have is if you can go back in time and tell your 8-year-old self, let's say, one thing, what would you say to yourself?
I um I would tell her I would tell her that they're not broken.
Mhm.
Um, because one of the earliest memories I have of realizing that I was different was when I think it came up in some class when they said, the voice in your head, listen to the voice in your head. And I'm thinking, I don't have a voice in my head. What are you talking about? So I think in pictures, not in words. Therefore, no voice. um, so I kept ruminating on this. I'm like, what the heck do they mean by this voice in the head? Well, it turns out that the phrase meant like your moral consciousness. I
Mhm.
guess it was like um, in media we have the depiction of like the angel and a demon on your shoulder and they're literally debating, and that's how you determine your morals. I guess I don't relate to that at all. Which to me that is like, well, if I don't relate to that, that must mean I'm not human. If every human has this voice in their head, have these two voices, there's two things literally fighting each other, that must mean that I'm not one of you. So that was the first time I started feeling subhuman, was because it wasn't, I was too weird. I wasn't even sure I was part of the same human species at that point. Because in my mind, I think I am a rather like morally okay person. But for me, it's like a decision tree, very, very black and white.
Decision tree. I like that.
Yeah. So, and each decision is based on what causes the least harm and what has the most positive impact.
Mm-hmm.
So every decision, it would like play out a scenario like, okay, well, what's likely going to happen if I make this choice versus what's going to happen if I make this choice? Well, if there's like three possible things that could happen with this choice, what's the statistical likelihood of this one happening versus this one happening? Okay, so what can I do to change the statistics in my favor? So I'm going to make this choice and then make this modification to that choice so I can make the outcome do what I want it to do. And so therefore my decision is made. I'm not even going to bother with the other decision because this is the one that obviously logically makes sense. So screw that decision. And then that leads down and like, this is how I just operate. I make these choices based on all of these parameters. And if there's so I pick up on a lot of patterns. I know a lot of autistic people are very pattern rule, a lot of routine. So we pick up patterns on other people's behavior. So if somebody is likely to react angry to something, well, you're going to pick the one that they don't react angry to. So it's a very logical process. And I think it's supposed to be an emotional one. I don't know, but it's not for me. It's not an emotional, and maybe that contributes to people thinking I don't have empathy. But the point is that, I make these decisions and that's my decision tree for like my whole model for making choices. And if I can know your patterns, I know your routines, I'm able to factor those in, those play into my scenarios, so I can continue making my choices that way. I have global rules. So if you're annoyed, and I never want to be annoyed, we're going to make all the decisions to always choose not be annoyed. Again, not healthy. So if you learn the nuance of some of these things, you can then change what decisions you might make in the future.
Right, I like that. So it really painted such a clear picture that I completely now understand that if you're in a situation that you're like, wait, should I not do this? You start going down the decision tree and like, okay, well, should I do this? I feel like for me personally, I definitely don't have like an angel and a devil on each shoulder. That's not at all close. It's more like I have either my mom's voice in my head or it's my own voice. I do understand the teacher saying from my neurotypical perspective of like that voice in your head, but it's more of a nagging voice. It's more of a nag. So like I'm eating a piece of chocolate and that nagging voice is like, don't do it. You're eating it. Why are you eating this chocolate? Do you ever get that nagging voice with chocolate?
I mean, I would get thought distortions related to a completely separate thing with my mental illnesses, but not voices. I barely even have sound in my mind, to be honest. It's mostly pictures, kind of quiet. Which I think maybe sound is one of the reasons why I don't like loud noises, because it is distracting.
Right.
So
yeah, and thinking in pictures is something that, if you have visual strength. So do you find that when you learn information, do you prefer to hear it auditorily or to read it visually?
Oh, definitely visual.
Visual.
I've been using closed captions now in almost everything, because just watching movies was difficult for me. There's some things known as like auditory processing disorder. I don't know if I'm like full on. I know I do have some actually hearing impairments. I am partially deaf in like the lowest of the frequencies.
Mhm.
But I also have some auditory issues, specifically with the working memory. It's like playing a game of Mad Gab. I don't know if you know that commercial from like the 1990s where they would say, I mole a machine. And you had to keep saying it over and over again until you got the answer on the card, which was, I am a love machine. That's kind of like what it is. So like if I'm listening to you and I can't quite hear what you're saying, and it makes no sense to me, like my auditory working memory just didn't process it. So I'm completely listening, just it's just like a big mess in there. So if I can have closed captions that can tell me from an objective point of view, because my subjective hearing is no longer in play here, I can read what you said, I can process that much faster, and also in tandem. Because sometimes the other issue is that sometimes I'm listening to a sentence and I just missed a word. For example, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. If somebody is speaking really quickly and I'm having struggle listening to them, I might get a choice of 3 words, because remember, my working memory is like what 3 to 5 things, not 5 to 9 things. So I might hear fox, quick, dog, or a fox jump dog, and I'm like, okay, that's painted enough of a picture that I kind of know what you're saying. You're talking about a fox jumping over a dog. Who cares if it was quick or brown? But if I only heard like quick, fox and brown, I'm like, I didn't really paint the whole picture. I don't really know what's going on here. I'm kind of confused. So that adds to the confusion where I'm like, and yeah, but if I tell you I'm confused because I don't know what I'm saying, I didn't know that I had auditory issues, I'm just going to pretend like, yeah, I totally know what you're saying. Keep going. No idea. Keep going. And because I knew that making people repeat themselves really makes them mad. People don't like repeating themselves, but
Yeah.
it's really helpful to me. Ask people to talk slower. Again, people don't like to do accommodations, so it's really hard to kind of advocate for yourself in these areas, because people just don't, I don't know, makes them mad. I think it's like disrespect. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know how these social constructs work, but talk slow, talk clearly. Don't be mad if I ask you to repeat yourselves, and we can talk. Otherwise, there's apps now on the phone that can do live transcriptions. I've been practicing with that. It requires data though, so if you have unlimited data, you're golden. If you don't,
Or Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi, yep. I ask for people's Wi-Fi password all the time. I don't know if that's a rude thing to do, but I do it.
In this day and age, I think it's like with all these apps that need it, or if you're going to do a Zoom call or something, you don't want to use up all your data for that. So I think that's totally appropriate. But I really liked what you're saying here. I'm writing down some what you're saying. I love it. But advocating and talking slower and using closed captioning. So when we think about children, younger children even who are autistic and who are struggling with having conversations, with learning language, with learning how to communicate, then it opens up that conversation of why augmentative alternative communication is important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I'm experimenting with myself. I'm not at all an expert on this. I know some people that do it with their children, and I have Zoom calls with them, and I find it amazing, marvelous. I'm like, wow, I didn't know they could do that. I only know like a little bit of sign language, not even enough to have a conversation with. But yeah, I think I had, which one was it? This one, the 5 things parents can do to help kids communicate. I think it was that question.
Yeah, we can kind of segue into that one. So the 5 things that parents of young autistic children, so especially those early communicators, or those children that do need skills at the basic level, what can they do to help their child communicate?
Yeah, so that, so I actually did list out exactly 5 things, because why wouldn't I? Being patience, speaking slower, and actually facing your child, because I might not look at your eyes, but I will look at your mouth. I know that there was an issue where with people with wearing masks, I could not identify who was talking to me. Okay. It was difficult. And you'd think I would be able to recognize people's voices, and some people I did. People I was familiar with, people I knew, I could identify their voices. But if I'm meeting people for the first time, I don't know what they sound like. And I couldn't remember what they sounded like 5 minutes ago after talking to somebody else. So that added the confusion. So if I can see who's talking as well as listening to them and all that, like that helps build my overall picture of what I'm supposed to be thinking about while listening to you. Let's see, the assistive devices should be treated like their voice. You never take that away from the kid. You don't, like there's just been like some horror stories in some of the support groups I've had where, people would take away the child's device as like a form of punishment. And that's a huge no-no. You wouldn't do that to a speaking child, so you shouldn't do that to a non-speaking child. In the same way as like you shouldn't then use that device to speak for them. There was another example that I had read about where I guess some of these devices, they're kind of like chat devices almost, where it's like a little text to speech. I think this child was a bit older. And in the device, they came home and it said something like, I will listen with a bunch of exclamation points. And when the parent saw that in the chat history, like, my kid would never say that to like reprimand themselves. Apparently the educator had used their own device to essentially make them say it. Like, it's almost as if you're telling a kid to go right in the corner and say, I will sit all day, or whatever thing that you wanted them to do. Like, that was super inappropriate. The other thing with that is allow them to express themselves the way a non-speaking kid would, in the sense that if you have buttons to say yes and no, just let them be yes and no. You don't have to say no, thank you, or yes, please. If
Yes.
your speaking child can be rude, so can your non-speaking child. Allow them to choose to be rude or to be polite, I think is one of the important things there. Accepting all forms of communication was another one. My toddler does this because I do this. We sometimes become situationally mute when we get in distress. So she might be asking for cookies. She's like, I want cookies. Mama, give me cookies. Please give me cookies. And I'll just be washing my hands. Like, my hands are busy right now. I cannot give you cookies this second. Like, you're gonna have to wait. Cue the meltdown because she's 2 years old and wants cookies. Next thing you know, she's going, like, she's just grunting and pointing. That is communication. I still know what she wants. Therefore, I should still listen and respond to it. I'm not going to then say, you need to use your words. I'm going to acknowledge that you still want cookies. You're still communicating to you that you want cookies. You're just now in a different state, a different emotional state. That's okay. I'm going to give you the cookies once I finish washing my hands. Like, I can't go any faster. Let's see. One of the ones I thought was like, what's their natural form of language? And I thought this was interesting because I don't think in words, therefore words are not my natural form of language.
Okay.
Like, I am a native English speaker, but like language, like words, is not my natural form. I move my hands a lot. I move my body a lot. I think in pictures. That would mean to say that pictures are my natural form. So if there's a young kid, maybe expand on that. Maybe you want to use an assistive device that has icons and imagery. Maybe you want to use sign language, in which case you can help your child by teaching that to them and also encouraging everyone in their lives to also get on board with communicating with the child this way, because that's what's going to make them feel welcome, is if they can communicate to their siblings, to their grandparents, to their friends. If everyone's, is willing to, to communicate with this child in a way that's comfortable for them, then that's an accommodation. That's not, I mean, that's gonna help them in the long run, I think. I told my partner, like, you don't have to learn sign language. You don't have to talk to me in sign language, but I would appreciate it if you could at least learn enough of it so that if I decide to use it, you know what I'm saying. I'll ask him, like, did you feed the cat when he's in the car and I'm at the house? I don't want to have to shout, across the lawn.
Yeah, that's great. I think using
Not
those,
done yet, baby girl.
you're fine if you need to mute for a minute. So yes, to recap, I'm just going to go over some of the notes that Tessa was saying here, that thinking in pictures, using alternative devices is so important, because when we communicate with someone, especially those early learners. So as a speech language pathologist, I know that those early learners, they're just trying to get their wants and needs met and understand how to communicate expressively back to us. A lot of times their receptive is growing, but for some of these kiddos, they might need support receptively as well, which is why if we can use a lot of different ways to communicate. So communicating with our hands. I also move my hands a lot when talking. Communicate with our with pictures. Actually, I love having a chart, something just really low tech, just so I can point it out. I love food boards because then at least I could say like, hey, we can eat an apple, we can eat a banana. There's food board options. So using those multiple modalities, I've found also to be very helpful. And I like the reminder that we want to think of their native language and their native way of communicating the way that feels right for their brain. And so I'd never thought of it that way. So Tess, I really like that way of thinking about it, that even though, in the English speaking world, native language would be English, that might not be the most kind of comfortable way of thinking about communication.
Yeah, and I want to say, like, I think it was like 2 nights ago, my toddler had a meltdown because of course she does. And I was trying to, it was the kind of meltdown where she was just on the floor crying, upset, just saying all sorts of things like, leave me alone, go away. Had like nothing would satisfy, like there was no way to distract her. And I was trying to ask him, like, what are you feeling? And she said, sad. And I'm like, you're not mad? She's like, no, sad. And that reminded me of one of the books that we have. It's called I Love You Because You're You. And I started quoting the book, and I'm like, I love you when you're screaming, when you stand and shout, I was just kind of saying, like, I still love you even in this meltdown mode. And that got her thinking. She's like, oh yeah, I have this book. And so then she got up from this meltdown, like mid meltdown state, got up, went to the bookshelf, was looking for the book, brought it out, went to the page with the little, they're little foxes, and she looks at this little fox and he's holding the toy plane that's broken. And that has nothing to do with the situation, but she knew that that was the feeling she was feeling. She related her feeling to the boy feeling sad about a broken toy. Now, I don't remember what triggered the meltdown, but it wasn't a broken toy. Might have been just asking her to brush her teeth. I don't know. But point is that she was feeling sad and she made that connection, and she had a picture to depict what her feeling was.
Wow, that's beautiful. Can you tell me the book name again? I feel like I need to look this book up.
Yeah, I Love You Because You're You.
I love that. And I think that, again, like that kind of
Yeah.
unconditional love and acceptance. I think one of my next questions here is, what advice would you give to parents for developing a strong relationship? And I feel it starts with this. So I'm curious what your thoughts were on that question of what you would suggest for parents.
So that one, it starts off like my answer for that, like it wasn't even specific to autistic kids.
Mhm.
Because it was the advice that I had for that was just discover what your kids are interested in and then just enjoy it with them.
Great.
And I think it's challenging with autistic children because we are known to have very limited interests and very like inflexible in doing things outside of our interests. So if we are sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, you're fine.
Discover interest.
Oh, discover what their interest is
yeah.
and enjoy it with them.
Yeah. So as an adult, whether you're autistic or neurodivergent or neurotypical adult, you are likely capable of adapting what you can do more than a child can. Yeah. So this, like any child, autistic child or not, like if they are only into Paw Patrol right now, because that's what my kid's only into right now, I guess that's the thing. Like I'm more likely to enjoy, like I'm more likely to, I guess, either maybe even pretend to enjoy Paw Patrol more than she would be able to be interested in programming.
Right.
So like trying to convince her to enjoy what I enjoy is going to be difficult, maybe not even possible, but she could convince me to enjoy what she enjoys, and we can bond over that. I think it also, like, their interests will expand as they grow. Sometimes we lose interests. I know I don't like Barney anymore, so I mean I grew out of that, but I still like Pokemon. So sometimes the interest stays. Sometimes you get more interests. It's like we're still people, so it's still dynamic. They're not going to be in that Paw Patrol phase forever and ever. So maybe it's just that you don't bond while their interests are so limited. Like if the only thing they like is Baby Shark and you hate Baby Shark, that's okay. That's okay. You can just wait until they like something else. Or you can try and dancing to Baby Shark. I mean, those are your options. um, so, and I think giving opportunities to your children to expand their interest pool. My mom, she would put us in soccer, in dance class, in swimming. And while I hated most of them, I enjoyed them. I like to dance, but not in front of an audience. I didn't really care much for soccer because it was too contacty and hot and running, and I'm not an athletic person. And I just didn't like swimming because the pool was too cold that year. So, and I think the important part is that my mom allowed me to say no when I didn't want to do these things. So she trusted me to give her that feedback, and I was able to trust her that she would respect my boundaries. Where I'm like, no, I don't like. I tried swim class, I don't like it anymore. She'd be like, just at least finish out the season. I'm like, all right, fine, whatever. But like I was a teenager by then, so I was able to have that kind of gray area to compromise. But when you're little, they don't really understand compromise because compromise is a gray area and it's a hard area to navigate.
All right, so I'm loving this, and the three takeaways I got from what you're talking about with your experience is that it's so great for parents to join in their child's interests because that's where they're going to build a relationship. I like how you said that it's going to be a lot easier for the adult to try and like Baby Shark maybe, or try and like, Paw Patrol than it will be for the child. So that's where it really does start. I completely agree. But a lot of parents that I've talked to fear, a lot of decisions are made based on fear and worry. They fear like, oh, my child will only like these things, or I really want my child to start to get interested in this because their peers are interested in this. And I like how you talked about exposing, it's never bad to expose, you can expand, but at the same time, you have to allow them to have veto power to say no if they don't like it.
Yeah, and the fear thing is so real. I totally get it. You're human too. You're allowed to have feelings. You're allowed to have those fears. But at the end of the day, it's your kid's life. You are not the same person as your kid, and they might not like the same things that you like. So, I know we might want to like live vicariously through our children, and we need to take that step back because if you don't relate to your child, like if you are neurotypical and your child's autistic, I think that's a really hard to relate to, because I had the opposite fear. With me being autistic, I was afraid that my child would be neurotypical, and it's so strange because I'm thinking, what if she outgrows me? What if she thinks I'm too silly for her, or I'm too childish, I'm too embarrassing? What if she doesn't want me to be around? What if she doesn't like me because I'm autistic and she can't relate to me in that same way? So I totally get that fear in the complete opposite direction.
Actually, yeah, that makes a lot of sense that you essentially parents who are neurotypical, who have autistic children, it's very difficult because they want their child in a way to be like themselves. I think this is a difficulty that all parents experience when you have a child that's different from how you are, that you kind of want to feel that closeness, that, that feeling that you have things in common. Actually, I worked with deaf parents who are afraid that they'll have hearing children. It's a similar opposite switch where it's just hard to know that your child's going to be different, but at the same time, different doesn't mean that you don't have that strong relationship.
Yeah.
I like that. Very good. So we're running close on time. And if you need a break, let me know.
I have no concept of time. So.
Okay, I went very fast. So let me see. So I'm going to skip down to the last few that I thought would be really great to talk about. What is the best way for neurotypicals to communicate with autistic children, teens, and adults?
This card. Um, so I think the first part of that question is like, why is communication so difficult between autistic people and neurotypical people? And I wanted to explain a little bit on the communication channels. Um, just like, scribbling down answers in a very non-scientific way. There's like three verbal types of communication. You've got your words, you've got your sounds, and you've got your tone, like your tone of voice. And then you've got the three physical. You've got your body language, like how you stand. You've got your gestures, how you use your hands. You've got your facial expressions, including your micro expressions. So there's all of these channels of communication, and as a neurotypical person, you can probably naturally use all of these to make a story, to tell your message, to communicate, basically is what that is. So you can choose to use all of these forms to make one coherent message. And when it all matches, and another neurotypical person in conversation, they're able to receive that message. At the same time, you can choose to make it not match, like with sarcasm, you're using the tone to change the meaning of what's being said. So now your story is slightly changed. And the other neurotypical person, they can still pick up on that. They can still read your whole message and be like, I got you there. I know what you're saying. As an autistic person, I don't pick up on those languages, and I also don't output, channels. I don't pick up on all those channels, and I don't output on all of those channels. And like, obviously I do output the channels, but I might not know that I'm outputting incorrectly. Like I said, I constantly smile, and it is not because I'm happy. I'm laughing because I'm nervous, not because I'm happy, not because it was funny. So like I do all of these things that don't quite match what I'm feeling on the inside, where I'm not telling the story that I want to tell, I should say. Like my intended story does not match my actual story. So when a neurotypical person is listening to my whole communication, they're like, something's not quite right. They might think like, do you have like an ulterior motive? Because that's pretty sketch. Sometimes it's misconstrued as criminal behavior, which can lead to dangerous situations. So it's very complicated in that manner.
Right.
Yeah.
When you feel like, and also I can see as well the fear of, did I construe that correctly? That kind of constant rechecking of,
Yes.
was that received the way I wanted it to be received?
And that's another spoon that we constantly have to be checking with ourselves. So like, I am aware that I'm not quite right. So now I'm constantly over explaining to make sure you understand. And at that point, you're like, oh my gosh, she's so annoying. Please shut up.
Now, when did you learn, do you remember? I know we got off topic a little bit, but when did you learn that if you took the extra step in explaining yourself, that you at least knew that you were able to convey the message you wanted to?
I don't know if I'm going to answer that question, but I do know that early on, it was, I shouldn't over explain. People don't want me to over explain. So I had to like kind of constantly live in this fear of, did they actually understand me? Because one of the things that would happen would be like, say someone's like, hey, meet me on, Wednesday the 22nd. Wednesday is the 21st. I know, I looked at the calendar, Wednesday is the 21st. So I'll be like, did you mean Thursday the 22nd or Wednesday the 21st? And the next thing you know is, you knew what I meant. Like,
Uh,
no, I did not, but thank you. So like, I don't know what they meant. To this day, I'll never know what they meant. So one of the things that I learned was I have to offer a solution if I'm going to ask a question.
okay.
So I'll be like, did you mean Wednesday the 21st? And then they'll be mad, like, you knew what I meant. Like, okay, I'm assuming you meant Wednesday the 21st. Answer received. Done.
Grouchy people, my goodness. Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah. I mean, I do think that there's a little bit, and I do wonder if this is a little bit of the difference between gray and black and white, but miscommunications happen all the time as a neurotypical. Oh my God, all the time. I'll have texts that I'm like, wait, did we mean this? Or face-to-face conversations where I'm like, I meant this to be happy, but did they think it was this way? But I think sometimes it's just like, I'll have confidence they got it, and I'll kind of live in that gray
Yeah,
hope. And
yeah, no.
okay, so that might
No,
be.
no, no, I can't live in that. No, that's too anxiety. No, I'm getting anxious just thinking about that.
So that's a big, yeah. So then that would make social interactions even more difficult when it's not them sending the message, receiving the message, and then worrying about making sure that the message was received and sent
Yes,
appropriately, instead of living in that, well, it most likely was, and I'm okay with that.
yeah, it is. There was a misconception because I would always get in fights with people saying, why do you always have to be right? And no, no, I don't have to be right. The information, the story, it just has to be consistent. That's all. I'm just trying to ask questions to clarify, to make sure that things were consistent. And perhaps my method is that I'm offering up all of these solutions. So I'm like, did you mean this? Actually, it's this. And I come off as a know-it-all. I'm aware now as a 30-year-old adult, I'm aware that's how I come off. But as a kid, I wasn't aware of that. So I know, like, as a teenager, people thought I was being specifically difficult, like on purpose, because I was trying to question these things. I'm like, no, I just need a consistent story. I need to make sure that we're all on the same page, because I cannot deal with being misunderstood again. I can't.
Yes. Okay, that makes perfect sense. And I think, like, I would hate to be misunderstood, but I guess if it happens, but that feeling of, it's like an itch. I need to make sure that it's that everyone's on the same page, that
Yeah.
everyone understands my message.
Yeah, it's like being a project manager and you're like, I just need to make sure we're all going towards the same goal. And instead, everybody's just getting mad at you for managing the project.
Yes. And then, so I want to make sure that we get a chance to look at those resources that you have. So let's go ahead and jump to there. What are some resources that you would recommend for families who are looking for support and more information?
So I have on I just made a page on my website today to word vomit all of these resources at tessawatkins.com/autism dash resources. Oh, I can share my screen now. Press that button. That's the right button. Share. Okay, so I just threw this up pretty quick. I know my camera's there. I'm there. So I just have just some general explanation of what the autistic community's preferences are, because there's a lot of stuff that's hard to learn. That's came off wrong. Okay, now I'm just being weird. If you wanted to learn about my autistic experience, I have essentially like my coming out story, because when you are late diagnosed, you kind of need one, because people look at you and they're like, you don't look autistic. Yeah, I know, you can't take a picture of autism. I also have my TikTok that I started like about a month ago. I don't know why I suddenly jumped on TikTok. Maybe, I don't know. And then
I tried. It's
yeah,
kudos to you. I couldn't break into it, but a lot of people are using TikTok as their primary.
yeah. I'll be honest, it took me like a week to get used to the TikTok platform, because as soon as I opened it, there would be a really loud video playing, and I would have a panic attack to the point where I would just like force close the app. And then I learned after a while that I could just turn my volume off and then open the app, because like when I tried to open it, I would hit a bunch of buttons like, how do I make the video stop? How do I pause it? Like it was trying to learn that user interface was tough for me. So yeah, it took me like a week just to figure out where all the buttons were and not freak out about the videos. I also have my Facebook group, One Bad Autistic. That's more or less a support group for other autistic parents. But if you're wondering if you're autistic, you're welcome to join. You don't actually have to be a parent. Just know that the content's probably for other autistic parents. And if you're not autistic yourself, you're welcome to lurk, learn, and listen to autistic people, specifically parents. I have my personal views on applied behavior analysis. So I have some resources here. We also have organizations to support. I know people love to do this. If you want to donate to a charity, organize a fundraiser, or otherwise support pro autism organization, I've got listed 3. The first one is the Pittsburgh Center for Autistic Advocacy. That's a local organization here. There's also the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network and the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. I know the ASAN, they've recently had some issues surrounding racial justice recently. They lost some support in that area. So that's, I don't know, I feel like I should at least put that there so people can be aware of the situation and then make their own choices from that. But I would usually choose like one and 2.
Sounds good.
I put in a crap ton of Facebook groups because I'm a millennial and Facebook's basically geared towards millennials. So you're probably a millennial if you're watching this video. So I put that into 3 categories for like if you are autistic or you're questioning if you're autistic, if you're a parent, caregiver, educator, or medical professional. There's a bunch of groups here. If you are an autistic advocate, like if you want to go to the next step and be like, yes, I want to help autistic people, there's a few groups for that as well to help, spread our agenda. Sorry. And then the last part, this actually came from an email I had written because I was working with the Mount Lebanon DEI working groups. And this is one of the education groups that I had put out there, and like, I thought this was a good email, so good that I put it on my website. It was just listing at like how autistic people are often marginalized through misinformation. So it's not like, complete exhaustive list, but it talks about like the erasure, this historical targeting for extermination, abuse by medical professionals, the stigma, invalidation, and then just continuing to be spoken over by other people that are not autistic, which is why I'm really happy that you invited me here to actually listen to an autistic person about autistic stuff.
I've learned so much, I have to say, in the last few months that I had never learned in graduate school, that I'd never learned via having speakers in, to be honest. And I think that it's great that these Facebook groups really have led me to receive so much more information than I would have otherwise. So actually, I would really motivate and encourage anyone who's listening, anyone who has someone who's autistic in their life, who themselves are autistic, whatnot, to go ahead and learn more from those links, because once you start to change your mindset into changing it from a disability that needs to be changed, that something's wrong. I was talking to Tessa before starting the recording here today about how I have a family who asked me if they should be concerned about their child. And I was trying to explain that, actually the child's language is really doing well. It's doing great, but he might still be autistic. So concerned, we don't have to link the word concerned with autism. It's just a different way of communicating, of being able to relate. And it's worthwhile for us to be more inclusive in the way that we communicate and the way that we understand. Because to tell you the truth, even as neurotypicals, we all could actually use a little bit of that with each other. We can use a little bit of speaking
Grace.
slower, grace, being okay if someone
Yeah.
asks you to repeat yourself, being okay if someone misunderstands and you have to say it in a different way.
Yeah, because it's not just autism that's, in this neurodiversity. You've got ADHD, bipolar, borderline, all of these, stigmatized disabilities where we might require some of the same accommodations, and for different reasons, for different causes, different experiences of why it happens. But, just give each other grace, room to learn.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you, Tessa. Thank you so, so much for joining us. And also anyone watching this, Tessa's been fantastic in responding to direct questions, emails, Facebook chats, really wonderful. So I'm sure if anyone here has any further questions, your information's here. Can we write in the chat your website again and any other
TessaWatkins.com.
Tessa Watkins. There we go. TessaWatkins.com. If anyone watching this wants to learn more. And again, you can let me know or Tessa know if you have any further questions. All right. Thank you all. Have a nice night.
Thank you. Cheers.